For many years, Bill Gaither has been well known in the public eye due to his legendary contributions to gospel music and the Gaither vocal band. His great career has long been lauded by fans and the media, but many were unaware of the inner hardship he was going through. Bill has chosen to speak up for the first time following a low-key and widely reported divorce. Start by establishing the story's introspective and vulnerable tone. This is a time of personal discovery rather than your usual declaration or public speech. The unspoken reality of the divorce. Bill Gaither has been a well-liked personality in the gospel music industry for many years, being the lead singer of the legendary Gaither vocal band and a well-liked performer. His private life was frequently viewed through the prism of his fame. His marriage to Marissa, who had supported him through it all, appeared to be the ideal union. As a couple who had established an empire in both music and ministry, they were the epitome of stability, modeling a life that many looked up to. But as much as the public admired them, there were things they didn't know, things Bill had kept secret. Bill is finally speaking up after years of keeping quiet and revealing the truth about his marriage's demise, a choice that many people did not anticipate. Bill did not make the decision to speak up lightly. He carried the burden of his personal troubles for years while presenting a faultless public persona in the eyes of his admirers. Many saw his marriage to Marissa as a partnership that lasted through the highs and lows of celebrity, a type of love story uncommon in the public light. They traveled together, spoke highly of one another in interviews, and showed up together at innumerable occasions, always holding hands and grinning. The world considered them to be the ideal pair. However, Bill now acknowledges that this perfection was a delusion, one he no longer wanted to preserve. He and Marissa were becoming more and more distant behind the smiles and public appearances. Bill had been bearing the weight of their hardships in silence for years, never wishing to ruin the romanticized picture of their life together. However, it grew more difficult to overlook the rifts in their relationship as time went on. It went beyond the minor arguments or dissimilarities that many couples encounter. Despite their best efforts, none of them was able to resolve the deeper issue. Bill is now prepared to speak following the divorce. For Bill, it's a moment of personal clarity, an opportunity to come out of the shadows of quiet and finally tell the truth about what caused his marriage to Marissa to fail. Even though it may seem like a revelation to the general public, people have always enjoyed a good story, especially when it is encased in layers of loyalty and love. However, there are instances when reality is much more nuanced. The same is true of Bill's story. He is more than just a well-known person from a failed marriage. He is a man who experienced difficult decisions, inner conflicts, and a profound sense of loss. Bill Gaither is finally revealing his side of the story and removing the facade of perfection after years of introspection and a protracted healing process. Now that the truth is out, Bill needs to take back his voice. The seemingly ideal marriage, the myth of a perfect marriage. Bill and his wife Marissa were viewed as the ideal pair for many years. At church events, charity parties, and family get-togethers, they were frequently photographed together, always smiling and unified. Admiration and expectations. They appeared to have the most stable relationship. Bill was a well-known gospel musician, and his marriage was seen as peaceful and perfect, much like his singing. Their partnership was praised by fans, and there was no reason to suspect that something was wrong. A life on display. The world observed as Bill and Marissa's bond became a part of their brand, with their mutual love of music, ministry, and family all contributing to the successful image they had meticulously built. From the outside, Bill and Marissa's marriage seemed to be a dream come true in the gospel music industry. They were the epitome of a power couple. Bill had been well known for a long time due to his amazing musicianship and deep, soulful voice. In addition to being his spouse, Marissa was also his confidant, business partner, and gifted musician. Together, they established a powerful business while winning the respect of their peers and producing music that moves. They were viewed as the perfect marriage, the pinnacle of faith, love, and cooperation. Public demonstrations of affection and victories were commonplace throughout their relationship. Bill and Marissa always seemed like the ideal match. Whether they were attending prestigious events, sharing their faith in interviews, or commemorating anniversaries on social media, Bill would frequently discuss how much Marissa meant to him, referring to her as his pillar of strength and rock. She responded by praising Bill and attributing her own success in the music industry to him. They appeared to have everything together. However, there were invisible fissures behind the glossy veneer. Bill frequently felt overburdened by the responsibilities of his personal and professional lives. Despite his strong devotion to his job and his beliefs, he started to sense that he and Marissa were becoming more and more separated. The little indicators were there, but no one outside of their circle paid any attention. The lack of emotional connection, the late hours spent apart, and even the slight change in how they seemed in public together. They were no longer the contented pair that everyone looked up to. However, Bill made an effort to persuade himself that it was only a phase and that all marriages experience ups and downs. Bill refused to accept the truth of what was happening, even if there were minor indications of concern. It was simpler to act as though nothing was wrong than to acknowledge the serious problems that had been simmering beneath the surface. Bill and Marissa grew more estranged the more he attempted to hide his emotions. Nevertheless, they both kept up the front while silently bearing their own hardships. To the outside world, they seemed content, but it was getting difficult to overlook the rifts in their relationship. Known for his candor and ability to connect with his audience, Bill was suddenly enmeshed in a world of personal hardships. He struggled to resolve the underlying problems that were endangering his marriage while simultaneously preserving his public persona. He opted for the former for years, but he knew in his heart that something needed to change. He could no longer conceal the truth about their marriage, and it would eventually have to be revealed. He kept the mask on for the time being, though, and the world kept seeing the happy couple they believed they were. The first warning signs of trouble, the inconspicuous indications, little tiny clues started to appear over time. Bill's friends and close family noted that he was becoming more reclusive and that he was frequently spotted going to events by himself or with his team instead of Marissa. Inexplicable absences. Marissa, who had previously accompanied Bill to all significant occasions, started to skip public appearances. Though these were soon dispelled, rumors began to circulate. It was just life or busy schedules. However, many who knew Bill well started to notice the cracks developing. The strain of a public life as Bill's profession developed caused both of them to feel the strain of maintaining a public persona. The demands for excellence from their community, their supporters, and even themselves became too much to handle. Once based on love, Marissa and Bill's relationship was now struggling to keep up with the demands of their careers and ongoing public scrutiny. Even though their marriage appeared to be flawless, there were times when the flaws showed. Everyone had always looked up to Bill and Marissa, but as time went on, they began to act differently in subtle but discernible ways. These little shifts were frequently dismissed as the normal ups and downs of any committed partnership. However, those were the first signs that something was off for Bill. Little things were the first. Initially, Bill observed that Marissa was growing more aloof. While Bill was preoccupied with his music and ministry, she would spend more time by herself, working on her own projects. Their previously lively discussions grew increasingly tense, and their shared laughing started to seem phony. Bill would occasionally approach Marissa in an attempt to re-establish their bond, but she would always push him away. Both of them were enmeshed in their daily routines, but Bill couldn't get rid of the sense that something was wrong. One of the biggest shifts occurred when Marissa, who used to be so excited to cheer Bill on at events, started to appear less involved. During interviews, she grew more reserved, answered questions in shorter bursts, and her grin never quite reached her eyes. Ever the professional, Bill attempted to dismiss it as fatigue or stress. They had been together for decades, so they should be able to get through a difficult time. However, over time, the difficulties began to feel more like structural fissures than transient ones. Awkward silences took the place of the light-hearted banter that had formerly characterized their relationship. Although no one dared to inquire, friends and coworkers started to sense the tension. When they were alone, Bill wondered what had happened to their relationship together. He was unwilling to confront the reality that the idyllic marriage that everyone witnessed was gradually disintegrating. The breaking point came when the lies were found. The marriage between Bill and Marissa ended after years of conflict. Both parties decided to keep the specifics of the divorce private, and everything was handled discreetly. The public was unable to refrain from speculating, though. Rumors were only stoked by the quiet. A tragic discovery followed. For a long time, Bill had disregarded the minor indicators such as the discussions that were lost, the increasing distance between them, and the quiet dinners. However, everything came to a head one day. Finally, in a heartfelt moment, Bill told himself that none of them was happy in the marriage. The struggle Bill suffered greatly emotionally from terminating a long-term romance. In spite of his professional achievements, he was now in uncharted emotional territory. After the divorce, he battled feelings of shame, worry, and confusion about how other people would view him. When Bill discovered something that destroyed the image of their ideal marriage, it was the tipping point. Bill discovered records he had never seen before one evening while reviewing some financial documentation for a new music project. The materials disclosed something unexpected, concealed financial difficulties. He initially believed it to be a miscommunication, either a missing document or something Marissa had mentioned in passing. Bill discovered, however, that things were far worse than he had initially believed. large withdrawals, accounts he had not been informed about, and investments that were far less secure than they had seemed were all documented on bank statements. The knowledge that Marissa had been keeping things from him for years was more painful to him than the financial betrayal. With a quivering voice, Bill questioned her about the disparities. The ensuing talk was devastating. Marissa acknowledged that she had made dangerous investments without first talking to him, but that was only the start. Deeper secrets existed, such as unspoken words and unfulfilled vows. Bill had the impression that the earth had been uprooted from beneath him. For years he had been in the dark about their financial situation from the lady he had trusted with his life and his heart. However, the emotional gap that had developed between them was more devastating than the money. Truly, the core of their relationship had vanished along with the trust that had once characterized their marriage. Bill came to see that secrets and falsehoods had taken the place of their previous love. The only truth that mattered at this moment was this one, even though it was a hard one to acknowledge. The internal conflict with himself, avoiding public scrutiny, Bill decided to keep quiet following the divorce. He kept his distance from the spotlight while concentrating on his ministry and music. While many questioned his silence, his supporters persisted. Why had he never addressed the separation? Why hadn't he said anything? Internal conflict dominated Bill's life. He dealt with the divorce on his own for the following few years. He fought against thoughts of failure and shame, wondering what went wrong and if there was anything he could have done better. The public quiet turned into a self-defense tactic. He didn't want to fuel more rumors, but he felt deep inside that the only way to heal himself and his supporters was to be honest. Internal strife characterized the days after his discovery. Marissa was loved by Bill. He had always done so. He felt a strong sense of betrayal, though, and he was unable to ignore it. He wondered how things had gone so wrong and questioned his decisions on innumerable restless nights. Should he attempt to save the remaining marriage? Taking great pride in his sense of duty, his beliefs, and his dedication to love, divorce wasn't something he took lightly. He wasn't sure he could accept the fact that terminating his marriage to Marissa felt like a failure. But as the days went by, Bill came to the realization that the relationship he had been clinging to wasn't what he had believed it to be. The trust that had once held them together was irrevocably shattered, and the hurt of betrayal was too tremendous. He started to question whether it was time to let go and give up on attempting to fix something that couldn't be fixed. However, the idea of abandoning Marissa and the life they had created together was nearly unbearable. He was aware that his choice would have a profound impact on the world. He was plagued by the anxiety of being judged by his peers, his followers, and even his own family. It felt like a personal setback to acknowledge in public that his marriage was ending. Ultimately, though, Bill realized he could no longer continue to live in denial. He was forced to make a terrible but essential decision for his own recovery. The public breakdown, the first signs to the world. Why now? Bill decides it's time to speak up after remaining silent for years. Why? Because he is prepared to recover on a private and public level. At this point, he believes that it's more important to move on in a healthy manner than to dwell on the past or the divorce. In the interview, Bill talks candidly about the difficulties, the suffering, and the lessons he has learned from the divorce. In an interview with a reliable journalist, he admits that despite their love for one another, there were unseen things that had caused tension in their marriage. Recognizing his role during the interview, Bill admits his involvement in the marriage's dissolution. He freely discusses the difficulties of juggling a well-known career with a personal life that needs care and attention. The recovery process. Bill acknowledges that recovery is a process and that he is not flawless. He considers the value of communication, self-care, and striking a balance between his personal and professional lives. His narrative is one of development and comprehension rather than resentment. The public started to notice the subtle indications of instability in Bill's marriage as he battled his inner demons. Little things like Bill's increasingly solemn manner in interviews, the absence of loving remarks on social media, and fewer appearances with Marissa at events were the first signs. Close friends and admirers began to wonder whether something was amiss. For as long as possible, Bill and Marissa made an effort to maintain appearances. They continued to publish images of their family, exhibiting a united face. However, it was becoming impossible to ignore the fissures. The strain between the pair was starting to be seen by Bill's supporters, who had stood by him through thick and thin. The once happy pair who had shared so much of their lives on social media was now barely interacting. Additionally, Bill was finding it increasingly difficult to handle the strain to uphold the appearance of a flawless marriage. Rumors started to circulate. The reason for their separation was conjectured in tabloid articles. Was it a midlife crisis, having financial difficulties, or was it something else entirely? The paparazzi trailed Bill and Marissa tirelessly, catching moments of awkwardness and discomfort that further reinforced the suspicion. Furthermore, despite Bill's best efforts to maintain the appearance of a flawless family, it became evident that the truth was too significant to hide. Breaking the silence. The choice to speak up mixed reactions. The public's reaction to the interview is not entirely uniform. Many of Bill's devoted followers thank him for being so honest and vulnerable. They like hearing from him directly, free of conjecture or rumors. Support from other artists. A number of public personalities and other musicians get in touch to offer their assistance. They respect Bill's bravery and honesty because they understand how hard it can be to bear the burden of a public divorce. Criticism from others. Bill's disclosure of his private life has drawn criticism from some quarters. They believe that rather than making a public admission, he should have remained silent out of respect. Despite this, Bill is steadfast in his resolve to speak his truth because he understands that doing so was essential to both his own and his followers' recovery. Bill made the hardest choice of his life. He would speak out. After months of internal strife and mounting media pressure, he could no longer pretend that nothing was wrong and live in the darkness of silence. He requested a chance to tell his side of the tale from a journalist and close friend. The time had come for him to take back his story and tell the truth about what had been going on. Decide to discuss his marriage in public. Bill was aware that raising his voice would draw criticism, scrutiny, and possibly even more negative public reaction. However, he was also aware that it was the proper thing to do, both for himself and his devoted followers. Bill disclosed the unpleasant realities of his marriage to Marissa, including the secrets that had caused them to drift apart. In an exclusive interview, speaking candidly, he described how their relationship had failed due to years of betrayal, problems with trust, and emotional distance. Beneath Bill's hard and straightforward comments was a profound sense of sadness. He talked about how much he still loved Marissa, but also how important it was to find peace and move on. His decision to break the silence was a remarkable moment of self-liberation. Regaining his life and his truth was more important than simply divorcing her. Going ahead, the recovery process. A changed man, Bill starts to prioritize his health and well-being. His career slows down as he prioritizes quality over quantity in his musical endeavors. He puts self-care first and learns to be happy and fulfilled away from the limelight. Looking ahead, although Bill is accepting this new phase of his life, he does not yet have all the answers. He is receptive to new opportunities, connections, and pursuits. He is gaining the ability to live in the now, accept each day as it comes, and allow himself to learn from his mistakes. A message of hope for those who might be facing comparable difficulties. Bill's tale serves as a ray of hope. His message is unmistakable. Recovery is achievable. Sometimes breaking your silence is the first step toward freedom, and it's never too late to start over. Bill has concentrated on his personal recovery and tranquility ever after the divorce. In an attempt to cope with the grief, he has gone back to his music and is putting all of his feelings into it. Additionally, he has re-established relationships with his children and close friends and spent more time with his family. Bill experiences freedom for the first time in years, something he had long lacked. Bill has been candid about his path to self-awareness and recovery, while Marissa has maintained a more private life. Through his songs, he still performs, shares his beliefs, and motivates people. Even though the divorce was difficult, it signaled the beginning of a new phase in Bill's life, one in which he could finally move on and let go of the past. As he moves through this challenging time in his personal life, his supporters have been there to provide words of love and empathy. Ultimately, Bill's tale is one of perseverance. It serves as a reminder that pain and adversity can befall even the most revered individuals. But with faith, self-reflection, and the bravery to speak the truth, they can rise beyond it. Bill Gaither's journey is far from ended, and his supporters are still there to support him as he embarks on a new, more genuine phase of his life.